Erev Shabbos Kodesh is the first day of Chanukah. On Thursday night, we all will be lighting Ner Aleph de Chanukah. So it's only natural that this week's share and next week's share as well will deal with different sugyas, different topics, different halachas of Chanukah. Many of the shiurim I've been giving in the past few months are in a way associated with COVID-19, with the corona pandemic, and today's shiur as well. So we will be discussing some relative questions that came to me in the past week or two associated with the pandemic. So the first question is, we still have many backyard minyanim in the entire Jewish world. In Eretz Yisrael, we have hundreds of minyanim in the public domain. Parks. Right out my house, many of you are familiar. There's a little basketball court. It's not a real basketball court. There aren't two baskets, just one little one. And children come and they play hoops. And now, past few months, we have a Nates minyan, we have a later minyan, we daven Mincha HaRav, Shabbos in the middle of the week. It's become a Mokum Tefillah, Baruch Hashem. Outside my house on the top level, we have a minyan, Mincha HaRav. It's a very quiet street, and they daven on the sidewalk, and hundreds of minyanim, outdoor space. However, it's becoming cold, and we had some very rainy days. So in many kehillas, in many places, they put up tents to have some warmth, some cover over your head. So in all those special minyanim, would we light Ner Chanukah? And especially, would we light with a brocha? That is the first question I want to discuss and analyze. So in Minchas Osher Moedim Chelik Beis, there are many, many sugis regarding Chanukah. And I discussed at great length. Mitzvahs Chanukah. Mitzvah Nechal Pesach Beis Mebechutz. Im Hoyadar Ba'aliyah. If he lives upstairs, he doesn't have Pesach Beis Mebechutz. Chaloy Nasomach Shazam. B'shas HaSakona. Manichoy al Shulchanoi V'dayoi. So I dealt with the question, Pesach Beisoy Mebechutz, is that ma'akev b'di'evet, or it is only a din l'chatchila? So I discussed at great length the minig of Hasidim. Hasidim in the entire world, vast majority, are madlik ner Chanukah in the house. One of the doors of the living room, the dining room, is miyamin, ner Chanukah mismol, bala bayis betzitzes mitzuyetzes be'emtza. Minig avisayim biyadayim, even in Eretz Yisrael. So most people in Eretz Yisrael, most from people are madlik Pesach habayis mibachutz. Why not? After all, we're in Eretz Yisrael. Whom are we afraid of? But many Hasidim light b'fnim. I personally have two Chanukiyas. I light b'fnim, I light b'chutz. Why do I light in the house? That is what my father did. That's what my Rebbe did. And I attach extreme importance to Minhag Avos, to Minhag Aviseinu Shebiyodeinu. I also have a beautiful big silver menorah, which I received as a chosen. So it's very precious to me. I won't light that outside because people might steal it. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is Minhag Avos. Why do I light outside? Because I see no reason in the world we shouldn't be Mekayim, the mitzvah, Kedina, the Gemara, Kedina, the Shulchan Aruch. And that definitely is the right thing to do. Persuma nisa lebnei reshus harabim. So I make one bracha and I am moitzi both neiros, both Chanukiyas. However, I did discuss, is it ma'akev b'di'evet Pesach Beisoy Mebechutz? And I argued it's a machlokes Rambam in the Tur and the Rashba. And the fundamental question is, what is the basic definition of Ner Chanukah? Is it all about Persuma Nisa? Or is it also about Persuma Nisa? Only Persuma Nisa or also Persuma Nisa? But fundamentally, it is a zeichel l'nes. Persum Nissa by its very nature is for others. Zeichel l'nes is everyone does a zeichel l'nes for his own self. Perek Kuf Zayin and Sefer Tehillim is the kapitel, is the perek from which we learn Arba Tzrichem Lahoidois. It is this perek in Tehillim more than any other that is about gratitude and thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when a person is Yotzei Makom Sakana. And in this perek we have an amazing posuk. Yoidu L'Hashem Chazdoi v'nifla'osav livnei Adam. When a person is zeicher to a miracle, when he is zeicher to the manifestation of Rachamei Shamayim, which is obvious and evident, he has a double obligation. Number one, appreciate. Realize that this is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and give thanks. Yoidu L'Hashem Chazdoi. Number two, she is gadel v'yiskadei shamei rabo. Nifla'osav livnei Adam. Make it known to others. Tell the story of Chazdei Shamayim. Tell the story of miracles. We need miracles. We need to remember them. That is why we have Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim in so many mitzvahs. That is why Chazal were metaken Mikra Megillah and Chanukah Persum Nissa. That is Nifla'osav Livnei Adam. And the fundamental question is Ner Chanukah only about Nifla'osav Livnei Adam? Or is it also about Yoidu L'Hashem Chazdei? We will not go over that sugya. I discussed it many times in the past, and it is in Minchas Osher, Moedim Chelik Beis, in the sugyas of Chanukah. Everybody can look it up and go through it. So I also discussed in my Sefer, and many tshuvas that were not yet printed, could one be madlik ner Chanukah with a brocha when people get together? And it is very common. Not in the period of COVID-19, but in a normal world, in normal days. People leave their homes, they get together for parties, with families, with friends, organizations, make events, B'neiros Chanukah. So many people come together. Would we light with a brocha, Persum Nissa? Similar question, but from a totally different angle. Some people work in offices, and many of their co-workers are non-frum Jews. So before leaving the office, it's already evening. Would you light Ner Chanukah with a brocha? Everybody should have part in mitzvahs Ner Chanukah. So the Shulchan Aruch does bring Tov Reishayin Aleph Siv Zayin Madlikin bebotei knesios with a brocha. Meshum Persum Nissa. Would that only refer to Botei Knesios or any public place where people get together? So Lubavitcher Chassidim are very active in Chanukah, as they are active all year round, doing Kiddush Hashem, bringing people closer to Yiddishkeit, having people enjoy the experience of Yiddishkeit. Could we make a brocha on Ner Chanukah in the middle of the street in Manhattan? They say the biggest Chanukah in the world is in Manhattan. I don't know. I didn't check them out. But could one make a bracha? And my psak is no. Would it be right to put on Neiras Chanukah? Why not? Why not? Make Persum Nissa, but you can't make a bracha. And we do not find in the Poskim Ner Chanukah with a bracha, only either at home, which is the Ikar Mitzvah, 3 different options at home, but they're all associated with your home. Pesach Meitzah Mebachutz, Chaloin Asomach Rishus Harabim, Manicha Al Shulchanoi. In the Rishonim we find the minig Ner Chanukah Bebeis HaKnesses, but not beyond that. There's an amazing tshuva of the Rambam, and there are 3 pirushim in the Rambam. Beis Yosef Mogen Avraham number 1, Chai Odom number 2. I should be embarrassed to say Minchas Osher number 3. What is it about? Shuvas Pered Ol Rambam, Kuf Yud Aleph. The Rambam was asked, Mi she'edlek Ner Chanukah, v'birech oleo, v'achar kach nizdamna lo acheres. He put on Ner Chanukah, and they got another one. Does he need to make another bracha? And the Rambam responds and answers, If when he made the first bracha, he had in mind the second hadlaka. No. You could be yotzi many mitzvahs with one bracha. But if when he made the bracha on his first hadlaka, he had no plan to be madlik another, then he needs to make another bracha. What is the Rambam dealing with? What is that other? Beis Yosef Tov Reish Ayin Aleph. Mogen Avram Tov Reish Nun Aleph. Not even in Hilchas Chanukah. Tov Reish Nun Aleph Siv Kot Nachaf Ei. Their interpretation is, we're dealing with a person that only had one ner. He didn't have enough oil. Didn't have enough psilas. He didn't have enough wicks. He didn't have enough neros, cups. So he was only Mekayim Neresh Beisoy. Then he gets more oil, more wicks, more cups. And he wants to be Mekayim Mahadrin. Mahadrin mina Mahadrin. Does he need to make another bracha? So the Rambam says, if he had in mind, he had a plan, he knew that someone is supposed to bring him more oil, more wicks, then he doesn't make another bracha. But when he was madlik that first Neresh Beisoy, he had no plan of doing another, then he needs to make another bracha. But that does not fit in with the Lashon of the Rambam in Pe'er Ador. Because in the Tshuva in Simen Kuf Yud Aleph and Pe'er Ador, the Rambam says, Hidlik Neresoy beBeisoy, va'achar kach nesdamen lo bayis acher, another house. Not additional oil and wicks in his house, another house. Chayodam Kuf Nun Daled in Hilchas Chanukah has a different interpretation. He says, person was madlik Chanukah in his home. Then his neighbor asked him, could you do me a favor, walk over to my house and be madlik ner for me? Be my shaliach. I won't be home till very late at night, and my wife and kids are at home. Could you do it for me? And then the psak is, if he had a mind with his first bracha, then he wouldn't say another one. But there's a big problem with the chayodam. Because if you are moitzi others, you would say a bracha. You would say a bracha to be moitzi them. It's their mitzvah. It doesn't depend upon the first bracha you said in your house. Unless we say he was asked to be madlik in a house in which there are no people. But if there are no people, there's no chiyuv adlaka. So we need to say, right now no one is there, but the balabayis will come there later, so he's chayav adlaka, and you are his shliach. It's a big doichik to say that's what the Rambam means. Especially the Rambam writes, Choizer umadlik umevorach afilu meyo po'omim. 100 times. So that same night, 100 people will be calling you and saying, I'm going to be home late. Could you go over to my house and madlik? It's a big doichik. How could the Magen Avraham say pshat, mahadrim and a mahadrim, if the Rambam writes batem acherim? Very poshut. We find two different nuschaot in the Rambam. The Beis Yosef and the Magen Avraham did not have the Pe'er Ador. It wasn't even published in their time. All they were aware of is Abu Darham. Abu Darham, Hilchas Chanukah, Simen Yutes. Abu Darham quotes the Rambam, Acher kach nesdamna lo neiros acherim. That fits in perfectly with the pshat of the Beis Yosef and the Magen Avraham. But that would not explain the Nusach HaRambam and Pe'er Ador. Chayodam would fit in with the Rambam and Pe'er Ador, batem acherim, but it's a doichak. I b'didi Italia, v'lav b'didi Italia. I want to make this clear. I say, if it would depend on me, and it definitely doesn't depend on me, I'm fully aware of that. I was somewhat embarrassed to say 3 pshotim. Beis Yosef, Magen Avraham, Chayodam, Minchas Osher. Aval kachi darka shel Torah. I b'didi Italia. I would say pshat. What the Rambam means is, yes, he was a madlik Chanukah in his home. And he's a lecturer, he's a speaker, he's a rebbe, he's a rabbi. And then he leaves his house. And he's going to go to one place and another place and another place and give a drosha here and speak there. So everywhere he comes in that same night, if people come together and it's Pesum and Issa, he could be madlik with a brocha. I think that's pshat in the Rambam. That's the most reasonable pshat. Is that my psak? Definitely not. Why not? For 3 reasons. First obvious reason is, well, it's based on Shuvas HaRambam. But the Beis Yosef, Mogen Avraham, Chai Yodam had a different interpretation of the Rambam. So many times I say with a touch of humor, sometimes we need to be choishes that the Minchas Osha isn't right. Not very likely, but you need to take it into account. Maybe he isn't right. And in this case, probably he isn't right, because the Beis Yosef, Mogen Avraham, Chai Yodam had a different Havana, a different interpretation of the Rambam. But even if we would accept my pshat in the Rambam, we don't paskan halachas from Tshuvas HaRambam. We paskan halachas from the Beis Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah and the Noisei Kelim, and nowhere do we find hadlukas nachanaka in brocha only bebotei knesiyos. Not any other place where rabbim might converge. So let's talk about hadlukas nachanaka bebeis hakneses. What is the origin and what is the rationale of this minhag? Not found anywhere in Bavli and Yerushalmi. But we do find it in many sources in the Rishonim. Sheboile aleket Tanya Rabosi, Sefer HaManig, even Meforshei HaShas, not many of them, but the Ritva and the Meiri and Shabbos Daf Chav Gimel. We do find many sources in Rishonim, the minhag lahadlik ner Chanukah bebeis hakneses. We also find the Rishonim that are unhappy with this minhag. Sheboile haleket disagrees. And he writes, I don't understand where this comes from. Everybody lights at home. So why light again with a brocha and beis hakneses? What amazes me is Tshuvas Maram Shik. Yoredei Shin Ayin Dalet. He writes that the Chasam Sofer abstained from lighting Ner Chanukah bebeis hakneses because he was choishish mishum brocha. What I don't understand is, I am sure that they lit Ner Chanukah in the Chasam Sofer's shul. After all, it's a shul minhag Ashkenaz, and everybody. This is a minhag which was accepted by Sfaradim Ashkenazim, both the Beis Yosef and the Ramah. So yes, Sheboile Aleke disagrees, but he is a yochad bein harishonim, not mamish a yochad. Tanya Rabosi also, but all the other rishonim bring this minhag. What is more important is it's the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah and all the achronim. So the Chasam Sofer himself kept away. He let others do it. But if he's choishish l'brocha v'tola, ma beino lebein acherim. And why would he be choishish against the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah? But anyway, yes, it is somewhat of a chiddush, of a questionable minhag. But lechatchila shelebarchatchila. That's the psak of Shulchan Aruch, and all the other poskim agree. We are madlik bebeis hakneses. Why? What's the rationale? We will briefly explain 6 different tamim, reasons. The most fundamental one, and that's the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. Madlikim bebeis hakneses mishum presum enisa. You already did presum enisa at home, but it is an additional level of presum enisa. That's the Meiri, that's the Ritva. That's the Beis Yosef quoting the Kolbo, and that's the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. Presum enisa. It's a gewaldige chiddush. Why would we make a brocha on more presum enisa? But that is it. That's the Rishonim, that's the Pshat Shulchan Aruch. Bira Gra, as a gewaldige derher, a gewaldige knetch, a big chiddush. The Gaon says, it is not only presum enisa for the rabbim, it is presum enisa of the rabbim, by the rabbim. And just like the chiyuv of presum enisa rests on the individual, on the yochid, it also rests on the tzibur. So in mitzvot d'oraisa, we have two concepts, mitzvahs al yochid, mitzvahs al tzibur. The Gaon is mechadish. The same applies to Pesum and Issa. Every individual, every household does Pesum and Issa in his own domain, al Pesach Beiso mebachutz. But the tzibur needs to do Pesum and Issa, and that is Ner Chanukah and Shul. And the Gaon ties in this minig with another minig, and that is the minig to say Halal in Shul Beleila Seder. The Beis Yosef, the Sfardim, and Chasidim as well say Halal with a bracha in Shul. That is not minhag Ashkenaz. Each and every one says Halal at home. It's part of a Godesh or Pesach. It's part of the Seder. Yes, but that is the Halal of Yochid. Halal Shel HaTzibur is the one we say in Shul. The Gaon says, these two minhagim, the Mechaber paskins with the bracha, even though Halal B'Rosh Chodesh is a minhag, the Shulchan Aruch paskins Tov Chov Beis Yifei, you say without a bracha. But these minhagim are different. Persum and Issa al HaTzibur. Lo rak Persum and Issa lerabim, ela Persum and Issa of the Rabbim. That's the Gaon. Number 3, Beis Yosef quoting the Kolboy. It was very common in days of yore that homeless people slept in shuls. And many times people came from other towns, other cities. And there was no one to light for them at home. So it's not madlikin or bebeisa. And these people resided in shuls. And they have no Ner Chanukah. They have no home, they have no door. It is for them that we light in shul. Number 4 is somewhat similar to number 3, and it is also in the Kolboy. In days of yore, there were many ignorant people, many more than we have today. We live in an age of knowledge, the age of information. Most people today are fundamentally learned. Many of them are not very intelligent. Just look around lately. But people are basically learned, especially Jewish people. We don't have the ameratzim of yore. Neither do we have the genius of yore. So in the world of then, there were so many geniuses and iluyim. We learned that Sforim were taken aback. Those were giants. But we also don't have the amaratzim, the ignorance of yore. So reason number 4 is lahoitze misha enoi boki. Those ignorant people, those amaratzim, they don't know how to light, don't know what to do. They're not familiar with the brachas, so we light in shul for them. Reason number 5 is Shuvas Arivash Makuf Yud Aleph, and is also quoted in the Beis Yosef. The minute to light in shul was instituted and established and accepted b'shas ha-gezeira. B'shas ha-sakona manichel shel chone v'dayoi. So we couldn't do Persum and Issa for the Rabbim because it was danger. It was danger. The government, the anti-Semites, were out to destroy us and tear us away from our Torah and mitzvahs. And that is exactly what the Gzeres Yevonim was about. So the Gemara says, so to compensate for the fact that we can't do Persum and Issa l'Rabim, we do Persum and Issa in Shul. That's the Rivash. The last reason on my list is Sefer HaManig. Chanukah, Siman Kuf Mem Ches. Sefer HaManig says, the Nes was in Beis HaMikdash. The closest thing we have to a Beis HaMikdash is our shuls and yeshivas. Based on the Gemara Megillah Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph, ve'elohem lemikdash mad b'kol makom asher yavo yisham, u'ela bot ha'knesses abot ha'midrash shebebavel. Just like we have Shechina in Beis HaMikdash, we have Shechina in shuls and yeshivas and houses of tefillah and houses of Torah. So that is a zecher lemenorah bebeis HaMikdash. That's why we light in shuls. So coming back to the question, would we light Ner Chanukah in parks, in backyards? Lecha oira, we should analyze according to which reason. Some of the reasons would apply, others would not. But I think no, it does not depend on the reasoning. It doesn't depend on the rationale. Because if we would be kovea minhagim based on the rationale, according to many of the reasons of the explanations that I just briefly mentioned, we should stop this minhag entirely. We don't have homeless people sleeping in shuls. And we don't have ignorance in our shuls. To my terrible dismay, there are millions of Jews that know nothing about Chanukah. They're not familiar with brochas. And it is not only in assimilated Jews in America. This is so disturbing and so painful. There are hundreds of thousands of Israeli youth that know nothing about our heritage, nothing about the Messiah, nothing about Torah, nothing about mitzvahs. I am deeply involved with kidduv organizations, with kidduv activists, and I meet many people, Balei Tshuva, and those that are not yet Balei Tshuva. Some of my children are deeply involved in these endeavors. So one of my daughters told me she met a group of students and they asked, when is Chanukah? When? Is it this week? Was it last week? Is it next week? They didn't even know when it is. So there was a survey by some group and they went to non-from schools and they asked kids, what's Chanukah? Why is it called Chanukah? I'm so embarrassed to say. So some of the boys said, Hayevanim chanku et Yehudim. They thought Chanukah is with a kuf and not with a chaf. And lachnok is to strangle. So the kids said, Hayevanim chanku et Yehudim, and that's why we have Chanukah. So it's awful. Yes, there are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of Jews that know nothing about Chanukah. But the problem is they're not in our shuls. So when we lighten shuls, it's not for them. They're not there. Those that come to our shuls all know about Chanukah. And they can all say the brochas on their own. So why do we light? According to the Rivash, there's no reason to light today because there's no Gzeres Malchus. Everybody could make Persum and Nissa. The Menigan says, Solas Pesach Beisim Abachutz. The Menigan Chutzlar says, Chaloina Somach Leshus HaRav. So why do we light in shuls? So regardless what the reason of the minig was, Hizaru b'minag avisechem shebiyadechem, and this minig is still with us. So coming back to the question, so would we lighten all those minyanim? I differentiate, and I think this minig is a chidush ve'en lecho boi ele chidushoy. We light in shuls, in yeshivas, places where people daven, and places that are defined as shuls. That's the minhag. So yes, for months we've been davening in backyards, in front yards, in public domain, in Israel, public parks, sports places, even some simcha halls that aren't doing simchas. So if you light in any space that is designated for Torah and Tefillah, exclusively for Torah and Tefillah and nothing else, you rented a hall, a simcha hall. You rented a sports arena, a court. You built a tent, and that tent serves for nothing else, just for davening, then yes, that is like a Beis Knesset, and you light with a bracha. But the minyanim in yards, in the public domain, we have been davening there for months, but the moment you finish davening, it serves as a park. Yolodim v'yolodos mesachakim berechovoteya. It's a parking lot. The moment you finish davening, the cars will be coming in and out. That is not a shul. And therefore there is no minig of adloka bebeis haknesses. That is my psak. Another question I wrote about today, and I was asked from far away Toronto, an alman that is alone at home, and he has no chaloin asomach l'shus harabim. Previous years, every night one of his children come to be with him by Adlokas Chanukah, to make him happy, to rejoice together. But this year, due to COVID-19, his kids won't be coming, and he will be alone at home. So the question is, if he lights on Zoom, and his kids will be together with him on Zoom, would that be sufficient to make a bracha? So let us briefly discuss what is the halacha when a person is alone with no Zoom. He is alone at home. Would he make a bracha or not? So all the Achronim quote the Magen Avraham. Tofresh Ayin Beis Sivkot Navav. Magen Avraham Paskins. When you come home, if your family is up, you're madlik with a bracha. If everybody is asleep, wake them up. If you can't, then without a bracha. And from this Magen Avraham, many poskim learn that if you're not madlik for others, only for yourself, you can't make a bracha. According to this psak, Mr. Alman, Shekadosh Baruch Hu Yisamech et Levavo, would light without a bracha. Unless we paskin that Zoom would be sufficient. But I think he would light with a bracha even without Zoom. So this Magen Avraham seems to be a huge chiddush. What's the difference between him and his wife? Why would he make a bracha just if there's another person? Why is he not enough for Pesum Nissa? Is Pesum Nissa only for others or for himself as well? Going back to the beginning of today's shir, I spoke about Zeichel Anais and Pesum Nissa. Machloikes Rambam and Tuv, but I think even if we're dealing with Pesum Nissa, why can't he light for himself? Mikra, Megillah, and Chanukah are like two sides of the same coin. Both are mitzvahs derabanan, both are Pesum Nissa. It is poshet kebeyase bekutche keshemesh betzurayim, and if I would be aware of additional expressions of Chazal, I would quote them as well. That you're chayiv a Megillah even if no one is around. You read the Megillah for yourself, so why would Ner Chanukah be different? I never understood this. Why would Ner Chanukah be different than Mikra Megillah? And why is your child or your wife more important than yourself, and he could only make a bracha for them and not if you're alone? But besides the difficulty I have, Misvoran, from Megillah, Tofresh Ayin Zayin, there's a halacha. Mishenimtza ben agoyim, person is ben agoyim. And this is a question I dealt with many times. I wrote a tshuva to a person that needed to do business in China. And he's out there in China. He's not aware of any Jew where he is staying. Does he say a bracha or not? So the Shulchan Aruch paskins, Mishenimtza ben agoyim, afal piksha madlikan olav bebeisoi. He needs to be Madik Ner Chanukah because he needs to see Ner Chanukah. And therefore he's Madik Ner Chanukah with the brochas. After Pisha Madlikan Ol Bebeisai. Mishnah Berurah on the spot quotes the Pri Chodesh, the Bir Agra. They ask, Stir and Shulchan Aruch, Tofresh Ayin Vav the Shulchan Aruch Baskins, Madlikan Ol Bebeisai, he doesn't say Berchas Araya. And Sharat Zion, Mishnah Berurah quotes the Mama Mordechai. He differentiates. If you see, you don't have to light. But if you don't see, you have to light. You have to light in order to see. And if you light, you say all the brochas. But what is beyond doubt from this halacha and Tofresh Ayin Zayin, you're alone. All the others are going. But you still have the mitzvah of Adlokas Ner Chanukah with the brocha. So how come the Magen Avraham Tofresh Ayin Beis doesn't deal with Tofresh Ayin Zayin? That would be a meridik kash. The Chai Adam, Kuf Nun Dalet Sivkot Yutes, and the Mishnah Berurah quoting this Magen Avraham, Sivkot Yud Aleph, Tofresh Ayin Aleph. Their understanding is that the reason one cannot make a bracha if his family members are asleep is because, just like in the days of yore, La'achar shekol tzareg menashuk, there was no more mitzvah. And they were madlik b'chutz. So our minig is lahadlik b'fneim, and we do pesum nisa for the bnei bayis, and therefore, when they are asleep, there is no more mitzvah. Ofer anitachas kapas legleim, but I think this is a mistake. We paskin, the Shulchan Aruch paskins in accordance to the Tur, that you could make a brocha ad alois shachar. So this statement In their days, la'achar shekol tzareg manashuk, there was no mitzvah, is not correct. That's shittas HaRambam. But it's not the shit of the Tur. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins according to the Tur, that we make a bracha all night. It seems to be that the Chaya Odom assumed, and the Mishnah Berurah followed in his footsteps, that the opinion of the Tur that we could make a bracha all night is based on the fact that we are madlik b'fnim, and we have pesum and isra b'nei bayit, but that cannot be. Because the Tur says, Lo kedivrei Rambam. I disagree with the Rambam. The Rambam says, La'achar shekol tzareg manashuk, you can't light. In the days of the Rambam, where the Rambam lived, there was no minig lahadlik b'fnim. The Rambam doesn't bring this minig. The Rambam only brings Pesach habayis mebechutz. And if the Tur's psak is based on the fact that we are madlik b'fnim, then there's no machlokes Tur and Rambam. Why does the Tur say lo kedivrei Rambam? So it is clear that the opinion of the Tur we could be mad like Ada Loisa Shacha with a brocha is not based on the fact that our family members are at home and they are up. No. It's based on the understanding that Ner Chanukah is about Zeichel and Es and not only about Persum and Isel Rabim. The same the Beis Yosef. Beis Yosef paskins like the Tur. Ada Loisa Shacha with a brocha. The Beis Yosef does not bring the minig of Adloka B'fnem, only the Ramah brings it. B'mkoimoi u'bezmanoi shel Beis Yosef, everyone was madlak al Pesach habayis mebachutz. And Afro-Pikan, he paskins like the Tur. And therefore, to explain the psak of the Mogen Avraham, just like in their days, la'achar shekol tzoreg manashuk, there was no presum and issa, you didn't make a bracha. So in our days, if there's no presum and issa b'nei bayis, you don't say, that's not correct. In their days, they did say a bracha, af la'achar shekol tzoreg. So why would it be different if your family members are asleep? I think the kavanah of the Mogen Avraham is different, not like the Chayodim and the Mishnah Berurah. The Mogen Avraham starts off and he wonders, L'choyre it's a machlokes Rambam and Tur, whether one could make a brocha liyachar shekol tzareg manashuk. Sofet brochas lahokal. So why does the Shulchan Aruch paskin that you could make a brocha la'achar shekol tzareg ada loisa shachar if it's a machlokes Rambam and Tur? And then the Mogen Avraham brings the Marshal. The Marshal says ad chatzois. But the Mogen Avraham says hagos maimoni, he says afilo le'achar chatzois kol zman shebnei habayis are up. So the Mogen Avraham actually means to say, if it would depend on me, I would say liyachar shekol tzareg, I'm sure you can't make a bracha, or at least lachar chatzois. But the Gos Maimoni says you could because your family is up, and therefore, if your family is asleep and it's only you, don't make a bracha. So, in my understanding, the Mogen Avraham only is relevant late at night, la'achar hazman. But when a person is madlik be'ikar hazman adloka shetiknu chazal, even if he's alone and no one else is there, poshut that you say a bracha. That is the din of Tofrei Shayin Zayin Mishnimtza Ben Agoyim. So anybody that is madlik be'ikar hazman halacha, and there are different minhagim. According to the Gra, the Litvish Oilam by Shkia, Chasidim Tzeisa Kechol. Some Chasidim Rabbeinu Tam. And then you have a half hour. In my Chuvas, I argued that Bisman Hazeh, it's more than a half hour because there is nightlife, and I don't mean Chas v'Sholem, their nightlife. We have a nightlife. And an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours after the Shkia, after Tzeisa Kechovim, people run to Koilalev, they go to Shiurim, they go to visit their parents, the wife's parents. They're out there. So it's still Pirsum and Issa. The Mogen Avraham is only relevant if a person comes home very late at night and everyone is asleep. It is then that the Mogen Avraham says, if everyone is asleep, you can't make a bracha. So Ploni Almaini, if he's madlik bisman, he could make a bracha without Zoom, without anything. But I do think, even it would be late at night, Zoom might enable to make a bracha. even according to the Magen Avraham. Minchas Oshan Corona. This is a sefer that is expected to be out in the market very soon. It's an amazing sefer. It's going to be about 600 pages. More than 150 tshuvis that I wrote just in this period, spanning what an unbelievable spectrum of sugis, and some letters and shmusim of chizuk as well. So one of the tshuvis is about Berchas HaGoimel, person recovered from COVID-19, and it was at the height of the pandemic when no one came, and he was all alone, and he couldn't have a minion. So Berchas HaGoimel achatchili you need a sorrow, and I passed it. Regarding Dovish Shebekdusha, when you need to be Metzaraf a minyan, Zoom is irrelevant. A minyan must be together. They must see and hear each other physically, directly, not through technology. However, Berchas HaGoimel, it's not a Dovish Shebekdusha. It's not a minyan. You just need a sorrow to be Makayim the Posuk v'yaroimemuhu b'kahal am. You need to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu together with 10 people. And maybe in this halacha, Zoom would be sufficient. After all, 10 people are hearing you, they're seeing you. So maybe the same regarding Ner Chanukah. It's about Persumenis, it's not about a minyan. You don't need a minyan. According to the Magen Avraham, late at night, you need someone. You need to do Persumenis. This is Persumenis after all. So regarding Berchas HaGoimel, it all depends on listening. So the telephone would be enough. Regarding Ner Chanukah, it's about seeing. So Skype, Zoom, any other technology, maybe would be good enough. But in our case, when a person is madlik bismanoi, he can make all the brachas, even though he is all alone. So today, we spoke about two relevant questions that are associated with this magefa, with this pandemic, but we also touched about some of the most fundamental yesodis in Ner Chanukah B'chlal. So it's interesting that the Mechaber doesn't bring the option of Nerish Beisoi. And the Shulchan Aruch Tofrei Shayin Aleph goes directly to Mahadran min ha-Mahadran, and he skips Nerish Beisoi. I explained in my sforum, Kiblu Aleim Choiva. But why is that? Sefer HaRakeach was one of the early Chasidei Ashkenaz. Simen Reish Chof Hei in Hilchos Chanukah, he writes an amazing thought. Mahadran and a Mahadran, throughout the days of Chanukah, light 36 candles. What is 36? Lamed Vav Shois, that the Or HaGonus was Mishamish B'yolam. The concealed light. The light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created when he said, Vayehi Oyer, Vayar Elakim es Or Ki Toiv. That preceded the sun and the moon. That is a light that is above and beyond the realm of our perception, understanding. It is a light that preceded the sun. It doesn't emanate from the sun. And that light was concealed. Odom HaRishon enjoyed that light 36 hours. Which 36 hours? Where does that come from? The Rakeach doesn't quote, but it's Yerushalmi Brochas Nun Daled Amud Beis. Odom HaRishon was created Friday morning. Mitzvah Shabbos, the Or was Niginaz. So he had the privilege of enjoying this Or, this light, 36 hours. And those are the 36 neiros of Chanukah, Mahadran, Mina Mahadran. Is that coincidence? 36? Or is there substance in this idea? There is substance. The Neis Chanukah was about the preservance of Torah, the salvage of Torah in Beis Yisrael. Where was that light concealed? Medrash Tanchuma, Parshas Noach, Nignaz b'Torah. For whom לעמלי תורה ביום ולילה, שבשבילו ha'olam kayam. So the Medrash Tanchuma says it was concealed, but not totally concealed. It was hidden and concealed. לעמלי תורה שבעל פה ביום ובלילה, שבזכות ha'olam ha'omed. Zohar HaKodesh in Truma, Parshas Truma in Zohar, Kuf Mem Ches Amud Beis. The Zohar goes beyond that and says, if this light would be totally concealed, the world cannot have a kiyum. The world would go back to toyu v'vayu. It would evaporate in an instant. However, that light, wherever there is a ben Torah that toils in Torah, whenever and wherever he may be, there is a keren or a beacon of light that goes out of the Oragonus and lights his path, lights up his eyes, his mind, his heart. So the Tanchuma says, Ha'or nignaz la'melei Torah shebezchus ha'olam kayim. And the Zohar explains, yes, the world cannot exist without the Oragonus. And whenever, wherever, a ben Torah is omel b'Torah lishma, he is zeicha to the Oragonus. So the Oragonus is also mitnotzets in the neiros of Chanukah. We find this idea in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. Imre Pinchas, the Pinchas Makoretz was one of the great disciples of the Baal Shem Tov. B'nei Esoscha Chodesh Kislev, Talmidei, Talmidei, Talmidav. They quote this idea in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, and they don't bring neither the Zohar nor the Tanchuma. Reb Chaim Evolozhin brings it twice. His introduction to Shnois Eliyahu of the Gra, and Asaf Sha'ar Aleph and Nefesh HaChaim. As I quoted, it's in the Zohar and a Medrash Tanchuma. Kada Kemech Rabbeinu Bachye, and Kada Kemech is an amazing sefer. The structure is encyclopedic. The letters of the Aleph Beis. Ois Ches Chanukah, Kada Kemech says, when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, the Pasuk says, V'tera Isa Kitov. And Chazal say, Nesmala habayis kuloi oiro. What was that light? Was it the light of the sun? Well, if it was day and the window was open, it should have been light before Moshe was born. If it was at night, where did that light come from? Rabbeinu Bachya and Kada Kemech says that was the Oragonus. Nothing to do with the sun. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was Noisein HaTorah. He was an infant, he was a baby, he was just born. But Moshe and Torah are one and the same. Zichru Torah's Moshe Avdi, Asher Tziveisi B'chayrav. Very last Perek of Nevi'im. Last Perek in Malachi was the last Navi. Torah's Moshe Avdi. Nesmala Bayis Kuloi Oiro, that is the Or HaGonus. So it should be no wonder. The Talmidei Baal Shem Tov, Imre Pinchas, Bnei Esoscha say, Lamed Vav Neiros, also coincide with another Lamed Vav. If we would be sitting right now on Beis HaMedrash, and I would be seeing you, and you would be seeing me personally, I would challenge you, and I would ask. So the Baal Shem Tov's Talmidim say, Lamed Vav, Neiros Chanukah Keneged Lamed Vav, which one? I'm sure everybody would shout out, Lamed Vav Tzadikim. What would you expect of the Talmid of Baal Shem Tov? You know, Hasidus is all about tzaddikim. No. What they say is not Lamed Vav tzaddikim. So which Lamed Vav? Lamed Vav Mesechtes of Shas Bavli. And that's amazing. Because if the Tanchuma says the light was concealed, La'amelei Torah shebal peh b'yoyim u'v'layla. If the Zohar says, whenever a person is omel b'Torah, a keren or goes out from the Oragonus to light him. Omel HaTorah is manifested be'ikar in Talmud Bavli, in Gemara. Everything starts from the Gemara. All the poskim start from Gemara. So Lamed Vav and Eres are also connected Lamed Vav Mesechtes. And when I sit and I look at my Eres Chanukah, I try to imagine that I'm seeing, yes, this is the light of Zvochem and this is the light of Menachos. This is Bava Kama and this one is Bava Basra. This one is Shabbos and this one is Brochus. And those Neiros are so beautiful. They're beautiful because they shine with the Aragonus. They shine with the Oyer of Torah, of Omer Torah, of Simchas Torah. So Neis Chanukah is all about Torah. The decree, the Gzeru was Lashkichum Terasecha. And the war waged by Matisyo Ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol Chashmonai V'Bono was all about the salvation of the spirit, of the neshama, of Nishmas HaYahadus. Because unlike Haman, unlike the Romans that were out to destroy and annihilate and kill, that wasn't the plan of the Greeks. Their plan was Lashkicham Terosecha Lavira Machu Keretzanecha. So the Nes was the salvation of Torah. So it should be no wonder that Neiros Chanukah are Oyer Torah, Ki Ner Mitzvah V'Torah Or. So let us rededicate our efforts to Omer Torah, and let's hope we will all be Zeicha to the Or HaGanuz, Shenignaz B'Torah LaAmelei Torah, B'Yoim U'Valaylo Shebeschusan U'Olam Oimed. Yet also we should be Zeicha B'Kora B'Yomeinu to see the Kohen Gadol. Meitu V'Madlakas HaNeiros B'Menaris HaMorah, B'Beis HaMikdash, B'Bias Goyel Tzedek, B'Mheiro V'Yomeinu Amen.